What's up everyone, Alex here, and this was the big video that I was a little nervous about releasing, or at least, well, recording, releasing. First of all, I'm a little bit quieter, not because I'm sick or like anything like that, but it is almost 2 in the morning. I have a new schedule where I've been staying up ridiculous hours of the night to get recording done, and because of that, I've been trying to just kind of be quiet so that I'm not too loud, because I am recording and my wife is sleeping in the other room. So there's that. If you hadn't caught my previous video, that's why I'm being so quiet and I've got the mic a lot closer to my mouth. But this was the video where I wanted to talk about a part of my identity that almost nobody knows about, and mostly because of what it is, and I'll get into that to explain it in the best way possible. I've probably mentioned this a few times outside of YouTube. I am much better at explaining things through text rather than like saying them out loud. So when I first told my boyfriend about this, it was through Instagram Messenger. So I'm hoping that I can articulate this just as well. It's also why I'm trying not to let my thoughts ramble on. I'm trying to just kind of explain it slowly, because I like to throw a lot of information out there at once, and it's hard for my brain to like or at least my mouth to catch up with my brain, just the way that I like do these videos. But I'm hoping that this video makes sense. So I have a dissociative disorder. The best way that I can explain this is to explain my personal experience with my brain and the way that it works. I'm going to be mentioning, not in detail, but I am going to be talking about trauma. So if that's going to be an issue, like, I guess skip ahead here in the video, because it's only a mention of it to just explain where this comes from. At least my personal experience, ongoing childhood trauma tends to cause a dissociative disorder. It's a common way for this to develop, and the identity of said child splits into parts rather than developing as one whole identity. So it's basically more than one person taking it's not refuge, but residing in one body. So it's like the brain has been split into multiple people. Each part, like each of these like split off parts, tend to serve a purpose for the person who has the disorder, and they are distinct identities. It's not multiple personalities. That's usually the most common thing that this is confused with, is multiple personality disorder. It is not that. Dissociative disorders completely different. So when multiple people exist as like a unit together, it's called a system, and you can say that a person has a system, or you can say a person is a system or is part of a system. It's a pretty flexible word, but that is basically how you use that terminology. The individuals that are split off, the identities that are split off, they're usually called alters or headmates, system members, others. There's lots of different terminology that people use, but that's typically what they're called. That's typically what they're called, and you've probably heard the term alters. That is a very common word there. They're almost all the same terms. Some people prefer some words over others. I'm really explaining this in a way that's tied to my own experiences rather than trying to speak for other people. So I'm just going to say, in the simplest way, dissociative identity disorder is when the headmates, the alters, are way more distinct, and when you're switching between these identities, between these entities, there's usually amnesia. You usually don't remember switching between them. They're usually very distinct and very, like, you can tell them apart extremely easily. But for otherwise specified dissociative disorder, that is what I have. The headmates can be distinct, but there's usually no amnesia between switching. Switching is when one of these headmates or alters is in control of the body. And you have to remember that it is dissociative, so the body is usually the terminology people use. It's terminology the headmates use, like the body's sick today, or something like that. That's how the wording typically is. So I have OSDD, which is otherwise specified dissociative disorder. So there are 3 of us. Usually one person takes like the most control. They are the most involved in, like, I guess you'd call it the outer world, like not things happening in the brain, but outside of that. You don't want to call it the real world. That's just offensive as hell, because headmates are very much real. The experiences that they have are very much real. So things that happen outside of the brain, usually one person kind of takes the reins. They are called the host, and technically, yes, that would make them a headmate. That would make me a headmate or an alter. That's one of the big things about going to therapy for system-related stuff, is accepting that you are one of these split-off identities. You are a part of the system, and you are a headmate. So there are 3 of us, so it's me and 2 other people. Just pretend my brain is like a house, and there are 2 roommates living in there alongside myself. And I don't know, pretend that I'm the one on the lease. I'm the one in control of all the utilities and whatever. I mean, they don't pay me, but that's the best I've got for explaining. I'm trying to find things to compare it to, so it's way easier to understand. Because I know a lot of sources online. There's a lot of information, and it's really hard to get a good understanding, especially of like weird brain stuff. So I'm just doing this the only way that I can, is making comparisons. How it affects my day-to-day life, it's really like having different parts of my brain constantly, well, not constantly, but occasionally at odds with itself, with each other. It tends to affect like my emotions, my thoughts, and like decision making. Like sometimes it's like I can't decide what I want to do during a given moment, or I can't figure out like how I feel or why I feel a certain way. I tend to have, I guess, conflicting feelings about different like viewpoints and about my experiences with gender and sexuality. That's part of, I mean, I'll do a more in-depth video of it, but that's part of the reason why I have so much trouble really pinning down what gender means for me, and like how I describe my gender, because I guess you could say I am a system, or I am plural, or it is an issue linked to plurality. Multiplicity is another word that people tend to use. It really just depends on the person. There's not really any, like, you're not going to offend anyone by using any of these terms in that way. It's just people will let you know what they prefer. So for me, I tend to be a different person from day to day. For other people, that's not the case. Their headmates are not so intrinsically linked to their own identity. Like, you would not say, oh, he's being her today or something. Like, you're not going to say that to somebody with more distinct headmates. You would just say that, oh, it's this person this time. But for me, it's more accurate to say that I am a different person at this point in time. I guess I never like introduced anyone just because like I don't feel comfortable having anyone on camera, but the other two are named Austin and Avery. And it is accurate to say like one day, like, oh, like I'm actually Austin today. When one of my headmates is more in control, I'm still kind of there. That's the whole point. Not the whole point. That's the whole thing about being the type of system that I am. It's called a median system, where headmates tend to blur. Median typically means between a singlet, a non-plural person, and a system. It's so complicated to explain this, but I'm hoping that it at least makes sense. There's loads of resources online to learn about this kind of stuff. I'll be linking some resources in the description just to further explain. I guess the way that I explained it to my boyfriend, it made perfect sense, but sometimes I miss information, or I don't explain things with the best wording, and then that makes it very confusing. So I'm hoping that's not the case here. I'm hoping that that I'm doing okay with explaining this. I'm looking down at my notebook, but it's very messy, so I'm trying to bring my ideas together so that it doesn't sound as messy as what I'm looking at on paper. I guess there are triggers to like having headmates come out more often, and that changes from person to person, but for me, particularly stressful days, or days where I feel like very angry, or I feel like there's been like an injustice or like something like that, typically it's Austin that is more present, because he is the system protector. That's his role in the system, and that could mean that he's going to be very defensive. He's going to be pushing people away. He's going to be very crude and very outgoing and very stern, not to any malicious extent, just like that's just kind of the person that he is, I guess. And there's Avery, who's a lot more quiet, and does not typically speak if they're in control, but they're very much tied to my views on my own gender. They usually come out a little bit more if I'm like overstimulated or overwhelmed. They're a very emotional part of me. They're a very, I guess, childlike part of me, not childish. They're definitely not much younger than I am. But I guess it's who Avery is. I think at some point I might introduce them a little bit more, talk about them a little bit more, but this is not going to be one of those channels where I actually have my headmates on camera. There are some people who actually do that, which is super cool, but I could never. I'm too reserved, and I'm still learning about that part of myself, so that's just like, I'm trying, but yeah, that's for a different time entirely. So I also made a note here, because I don't know why I didn't include this further back, but in a median system, typically people refer to their headmates as facets, which is like facets on like a diamond, like a cut diamond has facets, and it's to show that they are like, facets are different parts of the same person, but still distinct. Like, these are still different people. You would refer to them as different people. You would treat them as if they were their own person, definitely. And as for anyone who knows about this, My wife, my current boyfriend, and my ex-boyfriend. My ex-boyfriend my ex-boyfriend is a system as well, and I don't know how many of them there are right now, but like they have much more distinct alters. So yeah, my ex-boyfriend, that's where I first learned a lot about how it works, the different terminology. Like that's how it was normalized for me, because I did not have any resources to figure out what was going on. And I guess also all of you now know. Other than that, like I'm in some Discord servers that talk about plurality. I'm in some like communities where it's just a way for me to learn, I guess. That's why I joined these communities. I'm pretty quiet in places like that, but I'm learning more and more what is and isn't normal, I guess. And I think after this video, I might not go very deep into specific details about being a system. There's one other video that I'm going to be putting out like further down the line. I want to put out a video on how being plural affects the way that I view gender for myself, and it's going to be way more in depth, how Austin and Avery tie in with that, and just like I think it would fit really well on this channel because it has to do with gender. But I think other than that, I mean, unless I feel a little more comfortable later on down the line, I'm not going to be doing more videos about this. There's other aspects of my identity that I definitely want to cover and talk about, and I want to do that first before getting into back into systemhood, plurality, multiplicity, whatever you want to call it. But there is no question of the week, just because this is such a specific neurotype that, like, I didn't think asking a question really made much sense. So what I decided to do was open up the question of the week channel on Discord for people to, I guess, ask questions about me, and then I would answer them, because in case I forgot any specific detail, in case I forgot to like cover something, this would kind of help, I guess. There's not a lot of questions. One person asked like 7 questions here, 6 of them, and then one other person asked something else, so it's something. But definitely want to get more people on board with this channel and with this server so that I can get more feedback on these videos. Phoenix has asked 6 of these questions. So the first one is, which part of your mind/body are affected? So I had mentioned the decision-making part of my brain. I'm a very indecisive person. I'm very conflicted all the time on what I like, what I want to do, aspirations and goals, my own emotions, my own thoughts. I tend to have conflicting beliefs about things, because like my own ethics and morals tend to like collide with the other two. So like that can be a little bit complicated. Body stuff, there's definitely depersonalization at times, especially when the other two are around. Avery specifically, because we're thinking that they are not actually human, but we don't know for sure. It's really hard to figure this kind of stuff out, because it's really just brain stuff. So there's definitely that, and definitely like my body not feeling like it's my body sort of thing, but it's mostly the mind and the emotions that are affected. Yeah, I guess that would be it for that question. Let me get this person's pronouns. Oh my goodness, I forget that's they. Okay, I always default to they, but I know like if people put their actual pronouns in their profile, I'm not going to use they them if they want something else. How does it affect your surroundings and your relationships with people? I mean, when Avery is fronting a little bit more, they tend to get very overstimulated by stuff around them, lights and sounds and crowds of people. They typically shy away from people. They don't like getting very close to people. They like to kind of keep to themselves, I guess. Relationship with people, oh boy. There's definitely been moments when Austin has like decided to take charge and has like kind of stood up for me, like went to like cuss people out for a particular like reason, or get into arguments with people that I normally wouldn't. I am very non-confrontational. Austin is very confrontational, so that tends to lead into some issues. And it's one of those things where it's like I'm still upset from a previous argument, and then Austin comes in with one of those like, and another thing, sort of moments, and then has to bring it back up kind of thing. Not to like pick on him or anything, but like that has been an issue before. Avery's very shy and doesn't really get actively involved with people. They won't normally like make the first move to like talk to someone, or like I don't know. They can be pretty shy and pretty reserved. So it doesn't really affect my relationship with people in that regard, but they definitely like, people tend to ask like, why are you so like quiet? Why are you suddenly shy about this one thing? I don't think there's necessarily a lot of negative situations with other people because of the other two. Yeah. I'm bad at like ending these questions too. I'm just like, oh, so yeah, next one. Does it have phases where it's worsening? I had mentioned that there are particular triggers, but it tends to change quite a bit day to day with no real like pattern. It's not like having like a seasonal depression. I think that's what I forget what it's called. I think it's seasonal depression. It's not anything like that. It's definitely based on surroundings, but some days it just kind of happens. Sometimes Austin's just here all day. Sometimes it's more Avery that's here, and while I do have particular triggers, it just kind of happens as naturally as waking up with a headache, or waking up with Austin. It's kind of the same. It's kind of the same thing. How is the best way to cope with it for you? Actually, I won't show it off in the video because that's just like super personal, but I have a Headspace journal. I highly recommend people who have dissociative disorders to journal. I used to track headmates daily until I realized a lot of days it's very blurry. It's a little harder for me to like specifically know whether it's like Austin for sure. I don't know. It's a lot harder for me to like definitively track headmates, but I was doing that for a year to see if there was some kind of patterns, just to see like who was present more often. It's obviously me and then Austin and then Avery. Though throughout this year, it's been a lot of Avery. There's no real pattern to it. But the best way I cope is journaling. I have different social media for everyone. Austin used to have his own Tumblr. He doesn't anymore. But Avery has their own Tumblr. And Austin has his own Discord account that I keep forgetting about. He's an admin in 2 of my servers. So if you see a random username Ostentatious, that's him. In general, like I suggest doing something like that. For your headmates is like carving out a space for them, as if it were like your own, I guess your own life. Like make them their own social media accounts, let them get involved with like hobbies that they're into. That's what I do. I have separate playlists for music, for both Avery and Austin. I tend to let them write. I let them journal. I'll let them, like, they'll go online on their own accounts and talk to people, and interact in like Discord servers and stuff. But the journaling's been helping. Talking about everyone's interests and everyone's identities has definitely helped. Like exploring the different like aspects of them. I guess that's my best way, besides talking about it, of course. Being online, being involved in plural communities definitely helps. And introducing headmates to people, at least where it's comfortable. Avery introduced himself on the Gender Collector himself. We used to run the blog together, and they left to have their own kind of space on Tumblr with their own account. But then they came back, and now they're a mod over there, and they had an introduction post that they made. So something like that really helps. Like, it's not always coping so much as like normalizing it for yourself. Typically when you go to therapy for system related stuff, the therapist's goal is to bring everyone together into one single identity. Integration, they call it integration, which a lot of people are not cool with. Like, some people can live pretty like normal lives with their headmates. Headmates are really good at pretending to be the host. That's like the whole point. Like, it's called masking. At least in autistic terms, it's called masking. Like, people will choose not to go that route. After integration, the headmates still exist. They just exist more compact. I'm not sure if compact is the word, but there's a togetherness. They're less separated, or inseparable, I guess is the right way to refer to that. I guess my point was that, like, the headmates don't go anywhere. There is no like curing yourself of them, or anything like that. So the best way to cope is to learn how to live a normal life, and interacting with them. Talk to your headmates, find out like who needs what in order to live a good life. When did you get diagnosed with it? 2018, middle-ish of 2018. Yeah, like that's about it. Does it get triggered by special things? Well, if you want to talk hyper-specific, substance abuse is definitely a trigger for Austin. He loves indulgence. Like, he likes smoking. He likes drinking. I feel like I'm losing my voice here. But that's like a hyper-specific one there. For Avery, that one's a little bit tougher. It could be something innocuous, like sitting down and playing Animal Crossing, like some kind of ties to my childhood, especially like a classic video game, can definitely be a trigger. Man, that one's a little bit harder to explain. I'm not really sure, because it's so subtle and so mild. Like, Austin like makes himself known, but Avery is so quiet, and it seems like Avery's so very tied to my own identity that it's hard to separate the two of us, I guess. We have very similar interests and needs and likes and everything, so I don't really have like a very good answer to that, but I'm hoping that's sufficient. This other person named Sai had asked, what is the best advice you can give to someone who recently split and is having trouble getting along with headmates? Splitting is just like the creation of a new headmate. That can happen later in life. You have the initial split, but it can keep splitting. That's like, I mean, that could be a scary part. That could be a scary thing for a lot of people. The best approach, because me and Austin used to be at odds all the time, constantly arguing, like not knowing really, like, we didn't have like boundaries set. We didn't understand each other enough, always like fighting and being angry with each other. And I treated him a lot like an annoyance, rather than like a part of me that I had to not learn to accept, but learn more about. But the best way to start is figuring out your headmate's needs, because, I mean, just like any person, you want to know like what they need, what makes them feel comfortable. Maybe they need a distraction, maybe like life is stressful. Maybe something is overwhelming them. Like find a hobby for them, find something they're interested in. And then from there, I mean, just like what I did, you can make them like different social media accounts, stuff like that. Like give them freedom to be themselves as much as possible. Obviously, like you don't want to like let them like do whatever they want, but just giving them that freedom, I think, is a good way to start. I feel like I never have a good enough answer for some questions like this. I hate like giving advice to other people without the fear of like, what if I'm saying something wrong? What if this isn't the right way to go? But I can only explain it in the context of my own experience. So that's kind of how me and Austin started getting along, is actually sitting down and getting to know him and letting him into my life and into my daily life more often, because I used to block him out so much, and it caused a lot of trouble for me and for my personal relationships, like just holding him back all the time. But then I finally, like, I guess got to know him better over the last like year or so, and that has definitely helped. That has improved the way he talks to me and the way he gets along with me. So I guess that's the best advice I have. Someone who recently split is a little tougher because this is someone brand new, so maybe there hasn't been enough time to get to know them, to have them like get comfortable and settled in with whatever, with your headspace, with your other headmates. I guess that's like the only advice I really have for you, and I hope that can help a little bit. But that's all we have for questions. I like how I did. I think I made a really good choice in like having people ask questions to me so that I can answer them. And also, you can ask questions in the description. I will be replying to them. So if you want to learn more, if you want a lot more detail, like I said, it's easier for me to answer questions through text rather than like vocalizing it. So it's better like if I'm answering these things in comments. I think I'm losing my voice a little bit. But I mean, I hope everyone's doing well, and I hope that my video was informative, and I don't know, for people who really know me like in person, a lot of the talk about headmates and about plurality seems to make sense. It makes a lot of things make sense when you think back on them, like, oh, that's why he was feeling this way or acting this way. So next week, since I like to give a little teaser on this kind of stuff, I guess I'm talking about labels and pronouns that I really like. This is not, it's kind of similar to the video I put out where I talked about gender labels that resonate with me, but this one, it's really just like pronouns and labels and flags that I really like in general. So I'm gonna be talking about that, just little filler things for the rest of the month. The next identity talk, I guess I'm talking about gender euphoria. Maybe there'll be a guest on, I'm not sure yet, but like that's a topic I'm gonna be talking about the first Monday of next month. So that's about it. That's all I have. Leave questions in the comments and I'll reply to them as much as I can. And I am signing off for now. See you later.